Howdy folks, GROK the DuckFarmer here, and welcome to GROK Talk, where we're going to be talking about D&D, because that's what most of the GROK Talk is all about, and specifically behind the scenes of how I run my campaign. I've got a campaign going that's online, which is new to me. Well, it was new to me a year ago when it started, but all my experience in my decades before has been tabletop. And there are some things you can do with tabletop that's really fast. You know, you look at a mob and you go, ooh, because of what's happening, this mob needs to be more beefy. Well, you just change the hit points on it. Or, oh, nope, the party's really struggling. I need to tweak this a little bit. Let me drop and make the mob a little bit less healthy, just to play the game, to have a good experience. You adjust things on the fly really quick, especially when the players go, hey, wouldn't it be cool if... and you do. So, but anyway, to do the stuff online, I'm using Fantasy Grounds. And a long time ago, I was given a subscription to the, or not a subscription, but I was given a full version of this by somebody. And yay, thank you very much. And since I used that to upgrade to the Fantasy Grounds Unity, which is the latest version that we have, and this is what I'm using, and for the campaign I'm using 4th edition. This will do anything from 1st to 5th, and I'm sticking with 4th edition for reasons. Okay, let me explain the reasons. One, I'm very familiar with it. I have all the books and manuals for it, and I didn't see any reason to spend money to upgrade to the 5th edition. And one of the things that I really like about the 4th edition, that two things that I really like a lot about the 4th edition. One is the concept of roles. The roles being defender, controller, striker, and leaders. They define how a character works. You know, for example, defenders are those big beefy tanks, high armor, high hit points. Nobody gets past them. You know, that's the wall you need. The controllers are your typical wizard type that are throwing out area of effects. They're hitting lots of mobs, not for huge amounts of damage, but they're targeting lots of mobs. They stun them, they move them about, they paralyze them, you know, things like that. They're affecting the flow that way. Strikers go out and they do a massive amount of damage to one mob, and then typically they retreat because they don't have the high armor or high hit points. And then leaders, they have their own abilities, but they also shine in making everybody else better. They throw out heals, they'll command people to attack. They may sit there and say, okay, I hit this guy, everybody else, when you hit, you do more damage, sort of thing. And a good party has a mixture of those. All the way back in 1st edition, all the characters had those different roles. They just were never defined, they were never really spoken of. And I really like how they really classified that in 4th edition. So that's one reason why I really like that. Second, with 4th edition, everybody can do something every round. And that is a wonderful thing. I could complain about 1st edition for a long time and the poor mage, but I won't. Because instead we're talking about Fantasy Grounds. So when I'm ready to play or set up a campaign for the players, I need to define what's going on. I spend a lot of time thinking about what's happening there. I have a plan to get the players from level 1 all the way to level 30. And right now they're hitting level 14, 15. So they're about halfway through. I broke down the storyline into major chunks, called them chapters, and I defined what was going to happen in those different chapters. The later chapters were very loosey-goosey, you know, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs to explain what was happening there, whereas the first couple chapters had a lot more content. And then as we were playing through, I would say, okay, what's the next stuff? Let me add some content. Plus, based off of the current gameplay, I can adjust and say, okay, well, the players really wanted to do this. Okay, I'm reacting to it. I'm making that the major focus. For example, one of the characters in his backstory wrote about how he had a real hatred for dwarves. And so I said, fine. I'm going to make the big bad for the first 10 levels a dwarf. And so that's, Lord Blackhammer was there as a dwarf because I played off of what one of the characters was talking about. Had they mentioned something else, I would have gone with that. Anyway, so we are going to just start a new chapter, and I do things weird. It is chapter 7 that we're starting on, and I have an idea of what's going to happen on it. I decided to call it the Drums of War. And the funny thing is I've named it twice, because I wrote this down about 4 months ago. I said, yeah, I think Drums of War would be a good title for this chapter in the campaign. And I wrote that in my notebook, and I promptly forgot about it. And about 2 weeks ago, I was sitting there going, okay, I need to come up with the next chapter name. What should I do? Thought about several things. Oh, Drums of War, that sounds pretty good. And then I was leafing through my notebook and I found that title. I went, oh, okay. Doubly inspired to use that title. Anyway, so it's chapter 7, and I'm guessing we'll probably hit 12. Yeah, I mean, maybe by the time we're all done. But with each chapter, I kind of say, what should the party be at? And I said the party should be level 14. Now, some are 14, some are 15, and a few are less. And it just depends on who's been able to play in every session or not. And so what I end up doing is I take the people that are below level and I raise them up to the 14th level so that they can play on par. And that amount of XP that it took to raise them up, I'll take like half of that and give it to everybody else. So the people that have played all the way through and just barely hit 14th will get a boost of XP because they were there, whereas somebody who's, say, level 11, that's 3 levels below. That's a real painful thing. The amount of XP needed to get them up, that's, couple levels there. I'll take some of that and spread it around. Benched it already. So that's what I do. So starting with level 14, I need to, or with this chapter 7, I need to define an encounter. And most of my, not encounter, a session. Most of my sessions have about 5 encounters in them. So let me go ahead and fire up my Fantasy Grounds here. And what I need to do is load a campaign. And I'm certainly hope I'm remembering to blur out the private information here. But I've got 2. I've got the After the Burning, which is the name of the campaign, and that's the public facing campaign. And then I have my development only After the Burning, where I have all my content from 4th edition available for that. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. And it takes a long time to load because I have so much content. Now, back when 4th edition was publicly available, there was still available, you can buy the books, but there was a web hosting availability of the data. And so you could actually run some tools online to create characters and do things like that. As that was being shuttered, people who had active accounts like I did, grab some code that would allow us to scrape the data off of there before it got shuttered. And so I have a copy of this. I can't pass it on because it's not my content, but I have it because it was publicly available before it got shuttered. Now I don't have access to it anymore, but the local copies I do. So unfortunately I can't pass this data around to people as much as I would love to. The Wizard of the Coast has not made 4th edition code publicly available to people. So you saw how long it took. That's all the content. I have a very, very stripped down version for the public playing, so that all the individual people as they're playing don't have to wait for all that data to be downloaded. That's why I have the 2. Anyway, so what I will do is let's go to exports. Where is exports? I do modules. I do this so rarely. So export. What I do is I have in here, I define that chapter. This is chapter 4. I lied. Chapter 7, but rather than calling it 7, I use the level that it's going to be in. So this is After the Burning 14, the Drums of War. Hello, Millie, just stop coming on my keyboard. The cats, you can never train them. And so I've got all the information here for the current module that I'm playing with, and each chapter I save off as a separate module. That way they don't get too big. Again, I'm trying to limit the downloads for everything. Anyway, so what I need to do is typically I start with story. Yes. Millie, do you really have to interrupt my video here? Do you? She says yes. So what I do is I come into story and I change it to uncategorized. And my typical format is it's After the Burning, the level, so it's 14, and then I used to have different numbers for everything, and right now I'm switching to session. So 0, 1, that's the first session, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, G, as many of the pieces are necessary. And Millie, I'm gonna have to put you down. Down you go. She's trying to step on my keyboard, and that's a problem. So the first thing I'll do is I've got an idea of what the different encounters are going to be, and typically 5 encounters, especially if 3 of them are going to be combat, is typically a good amount. 4 encounters of combat is about as much as could be handled in the 3.5 hour window that I'm trying to aim for. So what we need is to make a new, let's make the first one. Let's go ahead and hit this, and it would be After the Burning 1401A, and we're going to call this at Fort, because that's where they are right now. And I have a structure that I use, and I just paste it right in. Let's go ahead and do a little tweaks here to make it look a little nicer. Tweak, setup gets tweaked, and then I like to bold this piece. So I like defining what the XP expectation is for this level or this encounter. I define a map, an encounter, a treasure, and then where it says stuff, that's the content, the blah that goes into there. And so this one I actually have it written down because I didn't want to type this on the fly, because that would be a pain. And one of the things that bugs me is the way that it adds extra spaces in here when I paste stuff in. I really don't want them to do that, but it happens. So oh well, what can you do? Oops, I need to go here. Features of the area. Let's go ahead and set that up as a heading, and then I need to bold some of these things. These are various features that affect the situation. Let's go up in here. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so this is chat. So, and if it's in that box that tells me it's chat, one of the things I can do, it's a large amount of chat. Let's chat this one. Click there, chat. If it's not in the window, it's text for me. And oh yeah, here's a tiny amount of chat. What I can do is I can just click, and it tosses it into the chat window that everybody can see. Most of the time I just read the chat text out verbally, but sometimes I'll drop it in, especially if there's a different, say it's a giant is speaking. I'll go ahead and I'll paste it in, and hey, I changed the text to giant. Why did you appear that way? Let's change chat commands, change the to chief. So now if I click, there we go. This is spoken by the chief in the language of giant, and as the game master here, I see exactly what it is. This appears in the giant script, and anybody who has the giant language, and it would say understood by, and it would tell me which players characters can understand that, would be able to read it. And so I will throw out things in different languages to different people so that they can hear that. It adds some nice flavor but I don't always flip it through. I typically just speak it. Let's go ahead and change that, delete that. Let's set this one to title, and then this. Yep, it's already bolded. All right, so this one, I wanted to start off the session with a big fight. And so it's a level 14 encounter. It's on par for the party. And let's go ahead and get a map. Now for maps, I need images. And let's go to uncategorized. And these are images that have been used and are publicly available for the party. But I need to import a new image, and I don't know if this is going to get captured because it's a window, but it's going to one of my images. I'm going to change it from JPEGs to PNGs, and there's the canyon. Let's go ahead and open that up, and let's make this much bigger. There we go. And if I click this, that, I can click this tool. My mouse is driving me nuts. Okay, so this is a map. It's one that's been posted publicly for people to use. I have a map program. It's called Dungeon Painter Studio. It works great. I'm just not really good at maps. And I would much rather spend the time on story and flow and logic and stuff like that than spend hours and hours and hours building a map, because that's not my forte. So I will borrow as whenever possible. So once I've imported a map, whether it's mine that I've created or borrowed from somebody else, I go to grid and I turn the grid on. And this grid, I like 50 pixels per whatever, per inch, whatever the definition is, because this is defaults to 50. And this, unfortunately, is not exactly 50 across. So let's go ahead and change the color to black. And I believe, if I remember right, this is 34.4 is the size on this. 34. I can see a little bit of a gap up here. When I zoom in, this is where adjusting it. See, there's a little bit of a gap. I think it's 34.3. Typically what I do is I'll calculate the size of the image and then divide it by the number of squares I want it to be. That gives me a pixel size. I plug that in, boom, I'm done. It's so much nicer if it's 50. Because then it's done. And yes, that looks like it lines up perfectly. If for some reason, let's zoom in again up here at the top. Some of the maps that I make or that are out there have grid lines already defined on the map. And sometimes the black one I just drew here in the game don't line up with the image. And so I'll have to come in and go nudge, 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 nudge. Nudge, 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 sit there and nudge it around until it lines up right. And once it gets as good as I can, I've got myself an image. I typically go in and change the name, because again, it needs to reflect what's doing. I can either just give it a generic name for the 14th chapter, or it can be a lot more specific and say this is going to happen in the first session. It depends on how I feel like it. I believe that name is visible to the players, so you don't want to put any secret information there or any spoilers. That's not going to work out so well. Then I will lock it, because that clears out that piece, and the image is there. Let me drag this over so I can go drag to map and get rid of the little asterisk there. So I have a map defined. It's a little bit too big now. Let's shrink this down some. All right. With that shrunken down, then the next thing I need to define is the encounter. So what is the fight that's going to go on? Now, in this case, they've been fighting scorpions in the area. They've been, through magic rituals, they've been made super, super huge. And so consequently, the party as heroes have the ability to fight them. The defenders at the cities, they can handle the small little scorpions that are, maybe a foot long, which is big, but they can shoot those and that's not a problem. But the ones that are 20, 30 feet across, that's a little big. So in a case like that, I come here to NPCs, and it's a weird thing, but that's the name for all of the mobs, any of the mobs there. So scorpion, and I already know that the legendary scorpion is the one I want. If I look at it, it's a level 12 elite soldier, which is nice, but that's not exactly what I want. But I'm going to go ahead and go with that. So I'm going to drag that. So I've got a copy out of creatures. Creatures is read only, but I want this one here. So if I open him up, I can now edit him, and I will make a encounter. And let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to make a new encounter, and this is after the burning. This is 1401A scorpion, whatever I want to call it. I want this to be a level 14, which is a 5,000 XP level. There we go. And it's going to have the same. I'll drag it in when I've edited. Now, one of the things that I have, and I'm going to keep it a very closely guarded secret, although it's publicly out there, but 4th edition has a great way of leveling monsters based off of, you can take any monster and level it up or down to the level you want. And there's a defined table for damages and health points and what everything should be. So I've got that, I programmed that into an Excel spreadsheet. So I can just change a table and say, okay, this cell, it's level 14. And this is let me go ahead and edit it. It's going to be a level 14 elite soldier. And I'm going to take it from elite, which is like 2 monsters worth, to a solo, which is a single monster worth. Let me step back. 4th edition, the way I play it, I gear everything based off of 5 players. So I'm going to set up an encounter that is geared towards having 5 on-level mobs for the 5 players. And the rule of thumb is 10 encounters would give you a level worth of experience. And so we can calculate fairly easily what that is. A 14th level encounter with 5 characters is 5,000 experience. If there were characters, then an on-level thing would be 4,000 experience. The idea is everybody would get 1,000 experience from this encounter. Anyway, I need to boost this up. So you'd have 5 on-level mobs. You can take one of those 5 mobs and turn it into minions that are 1/4 the experience, but you get 4 of them. And minions have 1 hit point. So they allow for damage to be done and for strategy on the board, but if you hit a minion and do damage, they die. It doesn't matter how much damage you do. If you miss a minion, nothing happens to them. And the other thing with minions is they don't roll dice as far as damage, they just do a constant damage every time. So as a player, if you come across sets of 4 of types of monsters, quite often those are going to be minions substituted in for one of the 5. So if you end up with 8 monsters that you see, they could all be minions, or 4 of those, especially if the names are the similar, 4 of those might be minions. And so, 1 hit, they die. And if you see at this point, level 14 minion is going to be doing 11 hit points of damage. Typically, so if you get hit by 4 of these guys and they're all doing exactly the same amount of damage, they're probably minions. When I was doing this on the tabletop, I didn't have enough tokens, so I would go ahead and put actual tokens, little dice. I had like 30 some odd little green dice. Those were minions. And I would just throw the dice down and say, okay, yeah, those, they're minions. Here on the computer, I'm not using any graphics for the monsters. I'm using letters for, so legendary scorpion is going to be an L, just because I'm too lazy to deal with that, and it's easier to deal with letters than it is to fiddle with funky little pictures and when you're looking at it and going, okay, is that a drow or is that they're hard to see, and I don't care. Anyway, so with this guy is going to be 5,000 because he's so each mob is 1/5 of the encounter. Minions are a quarter of a single mob. An elite is worth 2 mobs, and so they're double the experience. They typically double the health, and they're harder to hit, and they do more damage. A solo is all 5 of those mobs rolled up into one. So there's 5 times the experience, typically 5 times the health. There's a lot that they're big and beefy. Anyway, so coming down to here, a level 5 soldier is going to have 600 health. So I need to change this from 200 to 600 and not 1,000. And bloodied would be half of that, which is 300. And then initiative for a soldier would be 19. And then armor class, typically for a soldier, this would be 34. He's a big, bad, beefy guy. And then the other defenses would be 32. And then I look at this one and I go, okay, that was 28, 25. So the reflex was lower. The fortitude was pretty good. So I'm going to sit there and say 32 is so I'm going to say 33 for fortitude. I'm going to drop this one down to like 30 and make this one not 20, 30, and I'll make this one 31. Perception doesn't matter. Speed, he's fast. Even though he's freaking huge, he's fast. Then I need to take a look at the skills that he's got. The pincer, let's go ahead and click here. 19 versus armor class. That's not on par. A soldier who is a solo should be doing 25 versus armor class, and damage should be let's go ahead and change that to 3d6 plus 22, and I'm just going to say, for easy math, I'm just going to say 20. And so you can see there's some things that are highlighted here. These are the Fantasy Ground Unity already knows how to process plus 25 versus armor class. The damage, knocked prone, it knows what those are. Dual pincers, it does 2 of those pincher attacks. And it could be on same target, it could be separate targets, because he's got 2 big pinchers and he's a big bad boy. He can do double of those. Stinging Rain, this is an encounter action standard. This should be defined as an encounter power, and it doesn't look like it is. Anyway, this is an encounter power that gets to be used twice. He can do a close burst 3, 1, 2, or 3 enemies. He's doing AC again, so that's plus 25. And this, because this is an encounter power, this is going to be bigger than the normal default, and so I'm going to make it 5d6. And the target is slowed and takes ongoing 10 poison damage. Pincher Slap, it's an at-will, only once around. It's a minor action. This I need to change, still reach 4, which is good. But because it's targeting a secondary defense, it's not the full 25, it's only 23. And the legendary scorpion slides the creature 4 squares and the person's knocked prone. So he's able to take those melee guys that are up in his face and knock them away. And then there's the punishing stinker, and I have missed this so many times with a lot of these scorpions because there's a lot of things and I don't know everything because I'm fallible. And then there's the triggered one. If an enemy attacks with a melee weapon right in front, he gets to, let's see, reach 4. That's going to be against AC, so that's 25. He just does an immediate reaction to it, and they get vulnerable poison 5 until the end of the encounter. Meaning any poison that's done by him or others, for example, this one here, the Stinging Rain, it does some poison. If they have that ongoing poison, they are vulnerable 5, so instead of doing 10, it would be doing 15 damage on them. So we've edited it 8 legs. The final thing is he's +4 to his armor class against opportunity attacks if he has to move around. So that's defined. There's stuff at the bottom, doesn't really matter as much for this guy. So this, I'm quite often I will change the name. This one I'm leaving the name as is. It's an L. We'll change that to hostile. I can close this out. And then I come to the canyon and I can drag this into the canyon. I want him to start about here. Let's make sure he's going to be centered because he's a 4x4 freaking huge scorpion. And the party's going to start up around here. So that's what we're going to do. I reused this earlier. The party came in from below and there were minions, scorpions all over this place. I'm reusing maps if I can. Anyway, I set that as hostile. And I want to hit this button to add the NPC to the combat tracker, which just dropped him into there. And oh, hey, I've got some leftover stuff from before. Okay, it kind of grayed this guy out, which is exactly what I want to happen. So now I can drag this to my encounter section, delete the little asterisk-y thing. I can close that down. And I'm going to delete all the bad guys out of here. And doing so clears it off the map, which is fine. And then because this is a scorpion, they don't really carry money with them. I'm having no treasure here. That's kind of a standard. If you're being attacked by a big bunch of bears, how much treasure do they carry? They don't. Maybe there's something in their lair. If you've gone into their cave, maybe they've got some chewed up remains of some other people and you can loot their bodies and get some money, treasure out of here. This is just kind of a wandering thing, and that's the case. So we're starting off things with a fight, and I tell them that they've tracked this thing for 2 days and they finally found it. Go ahead and kill it. It's the last great scorpion near Fort. Kill the thing. And I also tell them that it's okay for them to use encounter powers and daily powers because I want them to just start off with a big bang. It's a big nasty mob with 600 hit points. They can throw all their big fireworks at that thing and kill it as fast as they can to give them a chance to enjoy having those dailies and encounter powers instead of hoarding them back and going, maybe I'll use it for the next big fight, but not this one. I said, go ahead. And I told them, yeah, go ahead. That they weren't going to be punished with this. They would have a rest afterwards that would allow them to recover this. Go for it. And then when that's done, I can sit there and read them about the scorpion being dead. And then they go back to the area of Fort. The governor comes and kind of preens publicly to everybody see, that he's great and everything. They've been there to help. He's kind of on the coattails of, yes, you love me, you really, really love me. So, and then they're off to the water inn. If I take a look at my images, and we take a look at the middle valley, let's drag this over. I'm clicking so I can drag you. Come on, drag over. There we go. And they're down here, which is Fort. There's not a good way to label the stuff here in game, which I wish there were. They're going to travel up to a town of Hope, which doesn't show up on the map they were originally given, and then they're going to go to this, a water inn, and they're going to have their experience there. So blah blah blah. These are verbal things that I read out. Features of the area is information telling me about how to run the map. So I mentioned light, it's daylight. So they don't have to worry about areas of darkness and difficulty of hitting things in the dark versus in bright light. Small rocks, there's these little small rock areas here. They're only 10 feet tall. They could climb up them fairly easily if they want to do so. It takes an athletics DC of 15 to climb up, 2 movements to get to the top if they wanted to be up there. Nobody cared. But then this one is, these huge cliffs are much taller. They're 50 foot tall. If they wanted to get way up there, they could. It's going to take more work. And then also afterwards, when everything is done, I define what happens here. The parties already stated earlier that the next thing they wanted to do was go work with the water inns. So that's what they're doing here. That's done. Let's go ahead and close this and close that, and I'm going to close this as well. And then I've got it defined for each of the other. Oh, I haven't filled this back in. So this one, when they go to the water inn, it's going to be a slightly lower level. Instead of level 14, which is on par, it's a level 7 encounter. Much smaller. I just want them to get a little bit of a fight going, but not really have much of a struggle. These guys, because they're so much lower level than the party at half the level, their bonus to attack AC is going to be much lower, and so the chance of them hitting is going to be much smaller. So that's what's going to happen. And I've got defined here map gate. Let's go back to my images. We've got the outside the water inn. Let's go ahead and drop that here. And this is an example of one that I made. You know, I defined a wall. There's a little blue curtain that kind of cut off, and then this path here. There's not much room. There's going to be some mobs here that they fight against, but not a big deal. If we take a look at, let's go back to here. What's this one? NPCs. Don't care about NPCs. Let's go back to encounters. There we go. Outside day, outer. Yeah. So outside day. I've defined two of these groups, door guards and door attendants. So if I let's drag this to the encounters at the gate, and we go to map, open up the map. Now I can sit there and click these. You can see where I've had to clean things out so I can start fresh and show things around. I want the attendants to be here at the front, and it really doesn't matter what the order is on these guys. Let's put him closer to the wall, these two guys centered, and then we'll put a door guard back here and a door guard over there. And the players are going to start up here. So these guys, these are the bad guys, we'll add them into the counter. So this will load. When I start with the fight, I drag the players over, and this is before the players can see it. I'll take a character. This is my one of the NPCs that occasionally helps the party, and so I use that internally because unfortunately I deleted this one. It doesn't show in. Anyway, so I use her internally as something to fight, and I'll drag over the players. I'll right click and make visible these guys so they can be seen on the map if they should be seen on the map. If they're hiding someplace or they show up later, I keep them invisible. And I wish there were an easy way of bulk selecting these. I don't know if there is. Yeah, I'm control clicking, shift clicking. Let's make them invisible. Did you become invisible? Let's click there. Nope, it only made that one invisible. So yeah, shift clicking, you know, I thought that would be really cool, but didn't work. I wonder if I shift click, can I move you all at the same time? I can. Didn't want her added on there. Oh, so I can move them as a group. I learned something today. Yay. All right, so I'll turn them on, but looking here in the fight, I don't want them to be seen in the combat tracker until it's their turn to fight. Because if a Tama, for example, had say she had an initiative of 22. I am putting an initiative of 22. There we go. That puts her after the door guards and before the door attendant. And let's say this guy here had a 25. It's Anna. But I'm in a weird state where she got deleted out of one spot but not in another. Anyway, all the players could see is that Anna has a higher initiative than Atama, and so she goes first, but there's no understanding of when the mobs will happen. If you know when the mobs are going to happen, you can better plan how you respond, knowing, oh, I need to go up, but the door guards are going to happen right after me. I need to react differently. So I keep that hidden. As soon as Anna is done, I'll go ahead and click this so that the door guards are now visible. And so when her turn is over and she hits next actor, it goes to the door guard. And they can now see that door guard in the initiative list. And they know that Atema comes next, but they don't know when the door attendants show up. It's a thing. I wish there were an easy way of having their attacks and damages show up. Because what ends up happening, if these guys are invisible, any attacks to them are also invisible. So the players don't know whether or not they hit or missed. So I have to always tell them I'm in the habit of just saying, yep, that hit, nope, that missed, for everything. Because I'm busy looking at other things. I'm not necessarily looking. If I come down here, let's delete this out of the way. See this turn door guard has that little eye with a line through it. That says the players don't know that it's his turn. So that's some of the fun stuff that's going on with this. Let's go ahead and close this because we don't need that anymore. I also have this set up as they get to the inn. They have an option. They're going to be asked to disarm before they go in, which is standard practice for everybody visiting these water inns. They're areas of refuge where they're given water freely. They can buy their food, but the water is free, but no weapons are allowed. And it's supposed to be an area of peace. The party, when they first visited the water inns, they surrendered their weapons, but over the course of Chapter 2, they actually did a huge amount of work to protect the water inns and managed to defeat a great evil, which I won't get into now. And as one of the results of that, the Water Inn tribe had kind of adopted them as part of the Water Inn and told them that, yeah, you're part of our family now. And they were allowed to keep their weapons while in the inn and use them to defend the inn and the people there. They also got some tattoos. They gave them some nifty magical abilities and stuff like that. And the elder of that Water Inn broadcast that information to all other water inns so they could instantly be recognized. And one of the strange things coming here is these guys don't recognize him. But I have it set up with things like blah 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 blah, wait for the party to ask to enter. There's some prompts. I've got some things written, but other stuff I have to just kind of extemporize based off of what's being done. And I have an option. Okay, do they surrender their weapons? In which case, they take the weapons. They're escorted into the court, inside the outer courtyard, to two little quarters, and asked, "Do you want to? Let me get your water skins. We'll fill you with water. Do you want some food?" And then they'll bring that back, the food and the water, poisoned in such a way to put them to sleep. Now, I already know that two of them don't eat. And so that's not going to be an issue. They'll still be awake. The other two or three would be knocked out. So consequently, there will be one attacker for each awake member of the party. They either fight at the door or they go inside, and later that night they get a fight with the people as night falls. If, on the other hand, they don't surrender, then eventually either the party gets mad enough and they'll attack the guards, or the guards will get mad enough and they'll attack the party. At which point, the fight goes on, defining the features of the area and what happens afterwards. On and on and on. That's how we define each of these sections through the story. And that's the kind of process I go through. To wrap it up, because it's been almost 40 minutes, I have a notebook where I plot out ideas of what I want to happen. And the closer I come to that session, the more I flesh out what that session would be. Many weeks ago, when it was go to the Water Inn, I was saying, Water Inn's been taken over by some bad guys. That happens to be the servants of Melith. Not that you care, but they've been taken over. There are some of the people of the Water Inn family still there. Some of the visitors are still there. A lot of them are gone. that's a hook for a later encounter in a later session. And so I just wrote that down. And then came to here. When I get closer, I said, okay, let's have a big fight outside a fort. Let's get them to the water inn. Let's have an encounter at the door. Let's have an encounter in the outer courtyard, and then another encounter on the inner courtyard. And one of the things I like to do is throw different experiences at the party, because not everybody is familiar with D&D. The very first encounter, I said, use your encounters, use your dailies, fire off all your big powers, go for it, have fun. But with the water inn, they're there at the door, or they fight at night. Either way, the very next fight happens before they can have a rest. So if they've used any powers that are encounter or daily powers, they're still used because they've not had a rest yet. And then when that outer courtyard fight is over, the alarm has been raised further in the inner courtyard. They can either choose to have a short rest, which means there's more mobs in the other room, or they can continue that same encounter going on, and there'll be fewer. And with the caveat, I put a little thing up there of, if at the end, knowing that this is the last fight, if the party still seems to be in pretty good health, I could bring in those extra mobs, because they're all minions. I could bring them in at the end of the encounter to heap some more damage on them, to make it a stronger, harder, more satisfying fight when they're done, without any real chance of them dying. Because dying is not much fun. We're here to tell a story together and have a blast. So that's what we're doing. And then let's go here to finally the last one. Have it, my standard thing, level X of encounter, whatever. This is all roleplay. This is all story stuff. This is nothing. There's no fight in this encounter. And later I can talk about 5-room dungeons, but this one, they actually, the inn has been pacified. All the invaders are dead, and now they get to fully explore and check out the entranceway, loot all the bodies, go into the outer courtyard, loot all the bodies, search through and visit the people that were cowering in their little cubbies, afraid. They can talk with them, hear some stuff, realize that the water inn is really in a weird state, but they already knew that. Then they get into the inner courtyard, and there are 3 curtains mentioned off of the inner courtyard, and it didn't matter which one they chose. The first room would be private dormitories with the chance of finding a good amount of treasure, which they did. The second room they choose would take into storage rooms, where there were all these backpacks and sacks and chests and things that had been used by people no longer there at the inn, because story hook, next session. And then the third room, they find the remaining survivors, where I actually call out who they are. Nobody asked for a count, so that's okay. And then with a lot of blah 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 and background as to what has happened, and a question: do they want to go look after the people that have been captured and taken away, and that leads them off to the Dagger Hills, or do they want to head back because they have some tasks back in the Western Valley? And I like giving the players the chance to say, what do you want to do next? Here's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things, or what do you want? Because it's mutual storytelling. The players can say what they want to do. The players can steer this in a lot of ways. I still have the overarching story that I want to tell, but I'm telling that story with the players. A classic example of that. Hi, Millie. Are you back here again? A classic example of that is one of the players said, hey, because of this, wouldn't it be cool if I went berserk? And I said, okay, let's do that. And it ended up, killing a bunch of goblins. And the afterwards, they promised, as they met with the goblin families, to pay them back, not with money, because they wouldn't accept money, but they said you could do a service for us. And they've actually accomplished all that. That took them, over to the Middle Valley. Many different sessions the story has built because one of the players said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And the best response to that is always yes, and you go with it. Or you could say, no, but what if we do this other? You know, and that's where they throw it off at right that moment of, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And you go, I don't have time right now, but we'll do that later. So anyway, I've been blathering too much. This is how I set this up. When this is all said and done, I go to my modules, I go to export, and I will export out the module with all the data, the images, everything like that, and it tells me that the module was exported successfully. So when I close out this one and I load the production version, I install and load this this module that I've been working with. That way, all the data I need is as compact, as small as possible. I could just have everything loaded, but every time a player loads the session, they would have to download everything, and I don't want to put them through all that. So that's what I do. That's the behind the scenes setup of how I do Fantasy Grounds. I like the idea of talking about some of the philosophy of how I define these sessions together. Like I talked about, 5 encounters is a common thing I have, and I talked about the mentioned the 5-room dungeon. That's worth a mention in and of itself, but that would be a different video. Anyway, this has been GROK the DuckFarmer here with my GROK Talk, and thanks for attending, and have fun playing D&D. It is a blast. I know I enjoy it, and thanks for watching. Bye.